Good night to you, ma'am.
Yes, it's a real pleasure having you on. This more after seeing you last night, and I mean that powerful prayer that you released there in St. James North. I said to myself, you know what? I've got to have you on the program tonight, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, pleasure being here. It's great to see you as well, and Mr. Murray. Good
Good
to see you on the show as well.
good
And
night,
let
sir.
me
Good to
wish you
see.
happy Mother's Day, Madam Leaks, and God
Thank
bless
you.
and love you.
And the
Good.
same to your wife. Extend that to her. And I want to just publicly say something
Yes, ma'am.
about your wife. That I think it could be about 2 years ago, could be about two
Yes,
years
ma'am.
ago or more, that I went to your church, myself and Bongalites and Lumumba.
So,
These rogues were at your church. And and this is after you had you had won the case,
yes,
where they were trying to they were, want to try to put the preacher in prison over COVID. And thank God you won. And we
yes, ma'am.
decided to surprise you that we were going to church. And
Yes,
and Bongo was there, Lumumba, myself, and Dave, and others, and we came to support you. And your
yes,
wife said something to me about the Marcia Week show, and I have to say to you, I mean, at that time we were still just having a few people on the show, and I must tell you that whatever she said to me, which I want to go into all of it right now, sir. Whatever she said to me about the show, Prophetess Heather Scantlebury, has come to pass.
yes,
And
ma'am.
I'm actually living in it. And I
Yes,
thought about it this morning because, sometimes I too, just like these words from God and all of that, you kind of get tired of it. Uh, um,
yes,
I know they're going to message me and with all kind of scriptures tonight, but I'm being honest. Sometimes I am tired of it. But I have to say that, and I wanted to say it publicly and to thank Prophetess Heather Scantlebury, that whatever
yes,
she
ma'am.
said to me 2.5 years ago, which I was looking at her like, okay, I am actually living it and walking in it right now. So let me just say that. But sir, I invited you on
Yes,
because
ma'am.
we are in a by-election. There's
Yes, ma'am.
a lot happening in Barbados at this time, and a lot's being said. We go to the supermarket. Though we're hearing the central bank report says the economy is great, but we're having a tough time at the supermarket when we are seeing all of the murders that's happening.
Mhm.
Only today alone there was a bank heist, or they robbed Brinks, but what I call Brinks, I don't know if I can't remember the correct name here, but they took, I think, either 9 or 10 bags of money.
Right,
And I mean, there's just crime is on. It's like like nothing else. No, I
right,
mean, we've never had this kind of
mhm,
level of crime before.
right.
And so
Mhm.
I just want to hear your thoughts on what's happening in Barbados at this time.
Well, I've said this over and over and over. Nothing is really going to happen until the systems are in place for those things to happen. And right now, we have a very clear cut revelation that the systems that uh, that are the foundation for the level of crime that we are experiencing are in place, and they are in place on the highest levels and also on the lowest levels. But the reality is, let's look at it like this. And the truth of the matter is that once crime, and I heard this years ago, I was listening to uh, a drug dealer, a former drug dealer who had gotten saved, and he was talking about when he was dealing drugs, he left and he went to China.
Mm,
And he said when he got to China, he went to meet individuals who were dealing in China. And he said when he got to the airport, he said 2 men in suits came, got his bags, put him in the SUV, took him to the business center where he met with the top man. And he said the guy sat him down, this big top guy in China sat him down, and he said to him, I mean, you guys over there, you black guys, you have, so much going on. You turn over so much and X amount of money. You have so much and so much of this coming in. And he said, what is your problem? He said, the Chinese guy asked him, why is it that you are not organized?
Mm.
He said, the reason we get what we do done so easily is because we are organized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so one of the problems that we have in Barbados is not crime itself, it is the organization of crime. Okay. So the criminal element in Barbados is now better organized than in the history of our island. And the reality is that it goes from the top all the way down to our 11, 13, and 12-year-old boys in the street. So it is highly organized. And this is why you're seeing what is happening. So of course, you'd have watched individuals and watched pictures to the point where some of the biggest heists in the history of the world were inside jobs. Okay.
Mm.
So you have to recognize that if a G4S armored truck is going to be, or a bank is going to be robbed, there's no way someone on the outside is going to just do that without surveillance, without taking the time to plan strategy, plan route in, plan getaway route, plan vehicle to switch over into, plan. Listen, it's organized. Okay. And until we can deal with the organized element of crime in Barbados, it's not going to go away. It's going to continuously mount and mount and mount. And again, as I said on your show before, if we do not get to the place where some of the top people, when they are found to be involved in these things, if they are not prosecuted, if they are not put in prison, if they can consistently escape the hand of the law because of prestige, because of money, because of name, because of family business, then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep allowing this level of crime to increase in Barbados. And we've had situations where drugs were found on certain boats here in Barbados, and things just got washed onto the water. People never went to prison. A lot of things happen here that proves to us that on many levels, the organization of crime has now built its foundation on every level, every plateau, and this is why we are seeing the level of crime that we have in Barbados right now. Beyond that, we have a church that is very passive and seem not to want to deal with these levels and not want to speak to power, but we have to continue to do that. We have to continue to speak and let individuals know that the season for change in Barbados, where we can have a system of justice, a system of righteousness, a system of good governance, all of these things that are necessary to make sure that we can stop these elements. Now, I listened very carefully to the new president of El Salvador, who's done a fantastic job. And he made a statement when I was listening to his speech that really caught my attention. He says, we have cartels, we deal with cartels. And I was able to get crime from 98% in El Salvador down to below 10%. Okay, we're still working on it. He says, but we have cartels and we deal with cartels, and we were able to get crime under control. He says, America doesn't have cartels, and they're saying they can't get crime under control. Hold on. Barbados does not have cartels, and we're saying it's difficult to get crime under control in Barbados. I don't believe that. I believe that it is easy to get crime under control, but the measures that are necessary to make sure that that happens, they're not in place, and we do not have a systemic governmental structure that will be absolutely willing to make sure that all of the policies, all of the legislation, they're in place to make sure that we combat this so that our people and our citizens don't have to live in fear of going out there on a daily basis and something happens and they're not able to make it back home or to continue in life. So we can do something about it, but it is going to take some work, Madam Weeks.
Yes, yes. Very, very insightful. Let me ask you, sir, what are your thoughts about, I want to change the subject a little bit, St. James North, and how important is this by-election to Barbados?
Okay, well, I'm going to speak to you from a purely apostolic prophetic perspective, from for those who don't understand apostolic prophetic, but more from a biblical Christian perspective, because I believe that everything follows a particular pattern. Okay, and what I have seen in St. James North is beautiful. It's the most perfect setup you can think of. Okay, and let me explain it from this point of view. You have the Democratic Labor Party's spokesperson on education that is going up against the former Minister of Education. So that makes this by-election not about Mrs. Dujon, and it's certainly not about Mr. Blackman. This is about education, and it's about the youth. It's about the future of the education of our youth and the educational system in Barbados that has been falling apart. Okay, Mr. Blackman is on the side of the party, the government, that in the last 6 years, education has deteriorated in the last 6 years under this administration, and it continues to do so even to this very day. The second element of this is the spiritual component of it. Now, in the Bible, when the new church started, the first apostle that was killed by King Herod was James. He killed James with the sword, and then he took Peter into prison, and then Peter was delivered by the angel. Now, St. James North is a combination of St. James and St. Peter. Okay. So what happened when Mr. Ornatha, matter of fact, St. Peter was a very, very solid constituency. But after Mr. Arthur won the election, he split St. Peter in two and created St. James North. So Sybil Leacock lived in the Wim in St. Peter. So he cut all of the Wim, all of Ashton Hall, all of the right side of Ashton Hall, right across. He cut all of that. That was a very heavy Democratic Labor Party area. Okay, so it made St. Peter a very fair parish, which is why that election was very, very close. But he cut that and left St. Peter. The constituency of St. Peter now has approximately 6,000 Barbados Labour Party supporters to about 2,500 Democratic Labour Party supporters. So you can never win. A Democratic Labour Party candidate can never win in St. Peter. And that's something that I thought that was totally disrespectful for Mr. Arthur to do in a constituency that is very, very fair. So it is put the fact that so many Democratic Labor Party supporters went over into St. James North. Now, if the Democratic Labor Party supporters come out and and vote in St. James North, Mr. Blackman cannot win. If they make a decision, you know what? We're going to go back to the Democratic Labor Party, because the St. Peter aspect of St. James North has always been a very high. All of that Ashton Hall, all of that zone, all of that area coming up to Myland border, that's always been a very heavy Democratic Labor Party.
Can I just say something to you? Because when they went into the Wim, I happened to be there, recording. And I remember watching when I got home that night. that I saw the BLP were laughing at them and saying, what they are, they said they are, this is St. James North, and they find themselves in St. Peter, canvassing.
Right.
But your explanation of it, because they were convinced that the whim was part of St. James North constituency,
It
even
is.
though it was part of St. Peter, we
Yes.
were bordering there. So thank you for that explanation. Yeah,
Yeah.
continue, sir.
So, yeah, that's what Mr. Arthur did. So if the Democratic Labour Party supporters in St. James North decide we're going back to the Democratic Labour Party, there's absolutely no way Mr. Blackman is going to win. Absolutely no way. Okay. Now that's just based on that level of information. But of course, the other element is that currently Mr. Blackman is not running a fair campaign. I've driven across areas of Sion Hill and on right across that area. For those of you, and I'll probably take a picture and post it. They have up to 5, 6, 7 posters of him on one pole. Okay, and that is not fair to a secondary candidate who will be probably utilizing those polls. So let's say now this week, the Democratic Labour Party decides now we're going to roll out our posters for Ms. Dujon. There is no place on the polls for her posters. Now, if they remove some of the posters from the Barbados Labour Party, they're going to say the Democratic Labour Party is, defacing their posters and removing their posters. If they put posters over their posters, it's going to be a problem. So this is where we need to have some level of governance when it comes to the political race. You cannot have 4, 5, 6, and up to 7 posters on one poll when there are other candidates. So you can see that the Barbados Labour Party is already not running a fair election. Okay, I understand the big man, big vision, big vision. This is a by-election, for God's sake. It is not a full-blown general election. Okay, and both of the candidates have not yet done anything for St. James North. So there's no need to act as though you've already done so much. None of them have done anything as yet. They're looking for the opportunity. But the mere fact that you already have all these big, placards, you have all these stuff posted around the constituency, all of this is crazy. And this is where you need the Electoral and Boundaries Commission to come in and to have a conversation with the parties and say, okay, well, going forward, this is what we're going to need, and we need you to recognize and understand that there are other candidates. I think there are 4 candidates that are
4 candidates, yeah,
right, vying for the seat there in St. James North. But I drive across there and I see how they have all of the polls already, lined, and I see them and I wonder, are these people understanding? Are they talking to their people and saying, no, we run a fair campaign? Okay, we run a fair election, and that's what you want to have at the end of the day. You don't want to run an unfair election. You don't want to run an unfair campaign and then be elected because of unfairness. So this is one of the things that I would like to see going forward, where there's some level of fairness, because they're both new candidates. They haven't done anything as yet. So if you're already demonstrating that you're not going to run a fair election, you're going to smear all the polls with your posters, then something is pretty much wrong with that type of operation, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed by the leader of the party, especially the Barbados Labour Party. The Prime Minister needs to address that and say, no, you run a fair election down here. You've never been elected. This is your first time out, your first time running for the Barbados Labour Party, your first time as a candidate for St. James North. You must run a free and fair election. And if the Prime Minister doesn't want to do that as the leader of the party, then the Electoral and Boundaries Commission needs to step in there and make sure that whatever is done fairly, so that we can have a free and fair election. Barbados is too small for all of this political corruption to be taking place. But in my opinion, some people are saying, it's going to be a walkover, for uh, Mr. Blackman, but I don't believe that. I think this election could have produced a, a major surprise for the Barbados Labour Party, and one that will send ripples across the island of Barbados in relation to what is happening and what should happen in the upcoming general election. So that's pretty much my take on what's happening.
Also about crime by get back, I do with the putting off by election. You said if the DLP supporters and members were to come out, what would take them what would want to make them come out to support? What would the DLP have to do as it is now? What would Ms. Dujon have to do? What would the president, the leader have to do to get them to come out to make that difference?
Well, I'll tell you, if I was a person running, I would write very heavily on what was done to Sibiliko. Okay, and the fact that there is an opportunity to make an amends here in this election, because what was done to her was very disturbing. As far as the candidate, she won the election fair and square, and there was a whole lot of legal rhetoric. I think the prime minister then, Tom Adams, came down, and there was a whole lot of stuff. If I had the opportunity, I would say this, and I will say this on the show right now, if I'm permitted. I had a gentleman that came to me and met
just
with
real
me.
quickly, take a minute because we want to get to Umbrella. Yes.
Okay, so let me say this quickly. He came to me and he asked me if I believe that God actually forgives people. And I said, yes, I do. He said, well, I don't think God will forgive me for what I did. I said, well, tell me what you did. He said, well, myself and another lady, we were told to do whatever we had to do to make sure that Arthur win the election when he ran in 1984. He told me that he and another lady ate ballots belonging to Sibiliko.
Ate it, like physically eat it?
They ate her ballots to make sure that she lost. So this is an opportunity for the Democratic Labour Party supporters in St. James North to come out and make an amends, to right the wrong that was done to Sibiliko. And I would push that as a main part of my campaign going forward.
Appealing to the people in the women. Well,
somebody might not see well all those practical things out. And in other words, I'm saying what the DLP has to do, in spite or because of her strengths, is still has to be backed up by a cohesive. I mean, there are manuals to step by step on election day. It's a different operation. That is when elections are won.
Yeah.
On the election day.
On the election day.
But I think she has potential. All the DLP has to harness its resources. That is why I was asking Apostle Scantlebury, what do they have to do? What will the DLP do to get people to come to vote?
Yeah. Well. On that note, as you mentioned, Apostle Scantlebury, what's your take on what you heard tonight of Mr. John? Oh, you're muted. Hold a second. Yes, there was a noise coming through. Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, as Mr. Murray said, she's a great orator for sure. I love the fact that she is able to, express her vocal ability in terms of the lowering and then raising her voice and then, speaking passionately about the things she's very, very focused on bringing to the people in St. James North. One of the things that I have realized in the times that I've heard her speak, and I've heard her mention the farming, I've heard her mention the lights, I've heard her mention about the single mothers, but the reality of and I've lived in the northern parts of the island, pretty much all my life. And one of the key things that lends to everything that you see in the north of the island basically are two main things. Number one is the high percentage of poverty that is in the northern parishes. And the second thing is the lack of infrastructure in the north to create the mindset for expansion of the areas of the northern part of the island. Now, I'm also a spiritual person, and I can tell you that it is one of the reasons why all of the major denominations in Barbados, their headquarters is in the south of the island. Okay, so I was part of a denomination. The headquarters is in St. Michael. Now, if you visited the churches in St. Michael, churches in uh, Christ Church, churches in St. Philip, and parts of St. Thomas, the churches are wall structures and they're large structures and they're carpeting versus churches in the north that were during the time still very much wooden. So when you come to the north of the island, you go back in time.
Mm.
Okay. So and I can tell you about that because I've experienced it. So which is one of the reasons that even in Spikestown, Spikestown has not had very much investment over the years, which is why it's basically dead right now, because of the lack of investment. Every time that something comes around, there is, input into Bridgetown. Bridgetown, uh, you have a day where the entire street in Bridgetown is closed off and all these different things. But the poverty and then the lack of investment to give individuals a fighting chance, and to the uh, that's what happened to the farmers. It's what happened to the fisher folk.
Ah.
Uh, it's what happened to anyone who is attempting to manifest any type of entrepreneurial element in St. Peter, St. Lucie, St. James, where I would consider the reality of the majority of back in the day, the majority of the kings that um, gave Barbados that advantage came out of St. Lucie, St. Peter, St. Andrew, St. James, St. Thomas. Okay, as much as they say St. George is the agricultural belt. No, when you look at the levels of sugar that came out of the north, could never be rivaled by any other part of the island. But St. Peter, St. James, and especially areas like St. James North, little to no financial uh, infrastructure input to give those areas a fighting chance. And I haven't heard her speak very much on that. I think that's something that she needs to add, because you can't miss it if you're walking around St. James North. You'll see the poverty, you'll see the bad roads, you'll see the poor housing, you'll see, that. I mean, like we're the people who had our sheep or rabbits or chickens in our backyard. You were never given expansion opportunities. So that's one of the things that I would love to hear her begin to speak about, because it is prevalent, very prevalent in St. James North, the part of St. Peter, Rotundo, Sion Hill. I mean, right across those areas, you'll see that there's been little to no infrastructural element in terms of the
Yeah.
provision of finances for entrepreneurs and individuals who want to expand what they were doing. Little to none by the current administration. And I would love her to take that point and hammer it as much as she can while she's speaking during this upcoming week. So,
Yes.
but beyond that, kudos to her. I think she has her mindset on. I think she knows what she wants to do. I think the people of St. James North, in her, they have a great opportunity to move forward if they're willing to give her the opportunity. But again, the idea of bringing in Labour Party supporters, making sure everybody is wearing a red T-shirt, that's not going to win the election. What's going to win the election is the fact that people are ready for change, if they are, and the fact that they know what is going to make things better for them. And they've seen 6 years of the Barbados Labour Party, and I think that's pretty much enough for most of the people in St. James North. So, as Mr. Murray said, there's a very strong undercurrent. I've heard it. I stood up there and I listened to individuals who were just on the road talking, and you can hear, a general consensus that, what we need to move away from just having a government that is dominating everything. We need to have some level of balance. And I think this election is a very critical thinking election. People are more educated and more aware that things could actually be better. So it's going to be a very interesting election. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Needed to make my Mr. Murray commented on Mr. Senator Ryan, but did you have a chance yet, Apostle?
Not yet.
You're
Not
muted.
yet.
You're muted. Tell it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you now, sir.
Okay, great. Well, let me just say, listening to Senator Walters, that was pretty much impeccable. His delivery, his stance, his passion, his intelligence on what he's delivering, and I like that when you present something to the public, especially in a campaign meeting, that you have the information to support what you're saying, and I think that is very key to what the Democratic Labour Party needs to be doing right now. I like the fact that he mentioned that without the Democratic Labour Party and Mr. Thorne being there as the current opposition leader and being in the House of Assembly, that Barbadians would not have known about the mismanagement of finances with the whole project. He also mentioned about how, I think he mentioned about 40 million, is it $40 million that the people of Barbados ended up paying with these high prices at the gas pump. So his intelligence is obviously very solid, and I think that goes a long way when people are listening to you, that your information is not pulling numbers out of the sky. I remember years ago a particular tourism minister. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, "Scant, listen, I don't understand these people." And he mentioned that there was some press conference, and the Minister of Tourism said we had, in the first quarter of the year, we had over 1.2 million people who came to Barbados. And he said he went to him afterwards and said, "Doc, where'd you get that number from?" He said, I just pulled it out of the sky. So apparently the sky has the numbers for the amount of visitors we have for tourism. It's not a matter of what we can substantiate. We just pull numbers. So the mere fact that he is able to deliver that presentation with the credible level of information that he brought, that is pretty heavy. And I think a lot of people would have gone away more educated from his presentation just now, to have a greater understanding of what is being done to them. So that's
Yes.
pretty impressive. I like that.